before satellites existed on the planet, the only way you could have an aerial view would be, maybe you shoot up a balloon with some sensors, and for 5 seconds it tells you about a small spot on the planet, and then it dropped down. And then you suddenly had satellites. They would go around and monitor and check and know everything and see everything. And once you have a constellation of satellites, the whole planet is monitorable. So imagine the equivalent of that in the ocean. You start off with these spot checks and samplings and small things here and there. And then we come in and put in Neera robotics, which basically makes the entire ocean continuous live monitoring data into an intelligence layer. And then what do you use satellite data for? You use it for coastal risk. You also use it for defense. And you can also use it to predict immigration. So what can you use this ocean data that we are producing for? It's absolutely up to whoever's using the data and the AI, whoever's deployed those devices.
Welcome to the Yacht Captain Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Kidd, where every week we dive deep into conversations with real estate pros, business owners, and maritime professionals about their mindset and journey to success. Please help support us on our journey and our channel by liking, subscribing, and commenting below so we can help you in your journey to success. Hello again, this is Scott Kidd, the Yacht Captain Investor Podcast, and I have a new friend of mine, Joy, and she is a founder, and it's a very interesting project. Rather than me butchering it and not giving you the whole lowdown, why don't you introduce yourself, Joy?
Hi everyone, I'm Joy. I'm the CEO and founder of Sumudra Oceans. Simudra builds AI-powered ocean intelligence infrastructure. Basically, we build the hardware, the data, and the AI on top of it that makes continuous monitoring possible in the ocean. Basically, we have this robotic device called Neera, which you drop anywhere, near coast, far shore, energy operator, backyard, shipping yacht, conservation projects, wherever. And as soon as you drop it, it starts to give you data on your phone and laptop about what's going on, where it's sitting. And its light, temperature, pressure, biodiversity. It has a camera to record what kind of species it's noticing. So suddenly the ocean transforms from being a black hole of data to this very live, transparent, actionable data. So this enables conservation, this enables monitoring and audit. We work to make sure they're smart boards and they have data. We work with climate risk and insurance and finance companies to be able to model coastal property values. We work with yachts companies and shipping companies to see how they can be fined for Environmental Liabilities Act or not. Basically, it's transparency and actionable AI, and we own the entire stack from the hardware to the AI. It's a one-stop device that does that for you.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. I mean, I know, like we were mentioning before, I know of one company, Seakeeper, that does a similar thing, but they're placed specifically on the yacht or on the ship or thing. But this is next level where it's really can be put coastal or put nearby or dropped in the water pretty much anywhere, which
the idea is a bit like satellites. How before satellites existed on the planet, the only way you could have an aerial view would be, maybe you shoot up a balloon with some sensors, and for 5 seconds it tells you about a small spot on the planet, and then it dropped down. And then you suddenly had satellites. They would go around and monitor and check and know everything and see everything. And once you have a constellation of satellites, the whole planet is monitorable. So imagine the equivalent of that in the ocean. You start off with these spot checks and samplings and small things here and there. And then we come in and put in Neera robotics, which basically makes the entire ocean continuous live monitoring data into an intelligence layer. And then what do you use satellite data for? You use it for coastal risk. You also use it for defense. And you can also use it to predict immigration. So what can you use this ocean data that we are producing for? It's absolutely up to whoever's using the data and the AI, whoever's deployed those devices.
Well, that's pretty interesting because, the age-old saying is if it can be measured, it can be managed. So we can we can get a better idea of what we're looking at and what we need to do to be better, to keep the oceans and the rivers and everything else. So I imagine you can put them in
100%.
lakes and put them in.
Yes,
pretty
yes.
much
We started out with oceans because we are very obsessed with oceans. We are all ocean people. But it would work agnostic of whether it is salty or not. So you could drop it in inland waterways, you could drop it in rivers, and it would work equally. We just thought the ocean is highly needed to be monitored right now. And as you rightly said, I think it's Aristotle who said, you cannot improve what you don't measure. So
Yes.
basically, we wanted to introduce that for the blue industry, the blue economy, but it would work regardless of oceans.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, because just having that data, it's one thing to have the data, but to be able to, compile it with a lot of other places around the world and just see, what the difference is and what the ranges
Yeah.
are. And
You could benchmark across different parts, seasonally, historically, but in the same spot over a period of time. And the interesting thing about the powerful AI sitting behind it is we're living in the age of AI. So the AI ecosystem is very well developed. That's my background, actually. I've built an AI company and exited it in the past, just before this company. And so the AI ecosystem is very close to my heart. It's how I started out my tech career, really, even before it became a thing. So the AI sitting behind all of this takes it to the next level. So even when you have the data, transparency itself is a game changer. But then the AI kicks in and it starts to tell you what might potentially happen. And then over time, it could also, hopefully a year from now, it could also tell you what actions you might want to take. What might go wrong? If there's an incoming storm, do you want to lower your infrastructure? If we can predict an algal bloom, maybe a couple of years from now, it could tell you that if you change maybe the local alkalinity, something might not happen or might happen. Things like that. That's the goal anyway, that showing you the data and the transparency creates a culture, and then the AI builds upon it and takes it to the next level, pretty much like it happened in all industries.
Okay, so you have a lot more. You're more predictive analytics intensive now too with
Over
the
time.
AI,
Yeah.
which the longer we have and track the data, and I would find it very interesting that if you put it on the inland waterways and in the lakes and streams to see where all those the salinity is changing and the alkaline, all that stuff is changed from, say, fertilizers or any of the other byproducts that are coming from runoff and stuff like that, which cause these algae blooms. Now, it's very, very interesting. So what is the main mantra of the company? Is to just gather the data at this time and then do the predictive analytics, or just...
So we are already doing predictive. It's in pockets because we haven't obviously put in enough devices across the world to model the world. But we want to be a bit like the Palantir of the ocean. So 10 years.
You want to know the one thing that separates investors who win from investors who get wiped out? It's not the deal flow. It's not connections. It's this. Due diligence. Not the skim the deck and hope for the best kind. The real due diligence. Asking the real questions like, who's the sponsor and their team? What is their experience? Does the sponsor have verified exits? What's the downside of the scenario? Are there any hidden fees? If you can't answer these questions and more, you're not really investing. You're speculating or possibly gambling. I built a tool to fix that. It's called the Passive Investor Due Diligence Scorecard. It's free, it's interactive, it's 125 questions across 4 categories. Who is the sponsor team? What is the market? What are the financials? What are the potential red flags? You check off what you verify, score updates live. It gives you a clear assessment to help you find out if this is the right fit for your family. It takes about 20 minutes or less, and it could save you years of regret. Use it before you wire another dollar, because the questions you don't ask are the ones that cost you the most.
10 years from now, we should be in a place where we have enough data, because AI can also triangulate, You don't necessarily have to have every piece of data to know everything. It's able to draw dotted lines between things. The idea is to turn into a Palantir, which makes everything easier. You can audit, you can find, you can predict, you can see how weather changes things and vice versa. You can take actions to protect your assets, to insure them, to underwrite them. If you're reinsuring, maybe the model can start to integrate this data. The idea is to be that Palantir where all of this is available. If like I say, the equivalent would be to be a satellite company 20 years earlier from today. That's the paradigm, because we own the hardware all the way up to the data. So we have the data stack and the moat. And we will start off with some AI, but over time, people across the world will think of data AI applications that we haven't thought of. So what we are really providing is the hardware and the data and some AI to kickstart, and then they will do what they want on top of it. So we could license out the data models, or if we are working with specific private regions, like if it's a specific port or a shipping company who don't necessarily want to open up their data to everybody, it could be their own in-house AI modeling that they don't have to share with everybody else, but it's their own data to see and operate with. But in a lot of the cases, what we are noticing people's vision is, in the very first instance, is that they haven't even seen so much data and transparency. They don't even know what this means. And like all industries, once you start getting data, the sky is the limit. Things have happened in this world that we never thought was possible once the data layer became available, right? We are currently looking at a world where your entire verification on a financial app literally happens with your photo. You no longer go into a bank. You no longer stand in a queue, produce your passport. That's because somebody made a security AI that's able to do that. Could we have thought about it 30 years ago? No. We thought of flying cars, but we didn't think of Airbnb. So once the data layer is available, I think people will think of things in the ocean and the way they are operating that even we can't think of. We are providing the infrastructure for it, but maybe things will come out of it, as it always does, that other artists, other startups, other creators will do with that data that we haven't even thought of.
Yes, there's so many, things with any new technology or new application. It brings, 10, 20, 1,000 more. A lot of people get kind of funny when you speak of AI and things like that. And, if you look back at the printing press, a lot of people said that it would have, it would displace all of the people that were writing and making books, but it actually made 10 more jobs with ink makers and book makers, and printers and press makers, and all the mechanics that went into it. And that's a very oversimplistic explanation, but you're going to see that, times, and that's going to be exponential just with the AI application of this specific data. And this is just one application. So how many of these devices do you have out currently?
We have about 15 to 20 of them out there, deployed across various locations in Europe. We are coming to LA in June, and we are starting to look at US, West Coast. So I'm going to SF next week because we are closing another funding round. This would be our third round. And so we are starting to look at US, but I think our goal is, just like the satellite providers, we want to be the data providers for the whole world. We want to map at least 30% of the world's habitable coast, so that it's all transparent and measurable, and suddenly becomes this data layer that is available for people to use. Yeah. So it's only 20, but hopefully we should get to 200,000 in next 10 years. That's the goal.
Well, that would be fantastic. So currently, how long did it take you to get the first initial 20?
Well, it took us over 2.5 years to just develop. The deployment has only been the last few months. So we got to 20 within months of opening our first deployment. It's the building that took a few years because there's lots of patents around the design, the tech, the IP around it, training the AI on basic data. All that took a couple of years. And we raised a couple of rounds of funding just to be able to make the product. And it's only now we've started going to market. I think by the end of this year, we would have deployed about 150 of these, 150 of these.
And in the US? Is that US or is that currently in Europe?
No, about 20% of those will be in the US. We are starting to get customers like shipyards that have to look at environmental reporting that would like this kind of data. We have started looking at conservation and coastal restoration projects that are wanting to see data on how their efforts are because they have to report back to their stakeholders, and the stakeholders would like to see the data. We have started talking to climate finance, especially banks who are financing on coastal sites like properties. We've started talking to hotel alliances because 70% of their properties are usually luxury properties are on the beach. So what does it mean for them? For instance, if you have swimmers, you must know the E. coli factor in the water. You don't want them to fall sick. You must know it.
Yes.
So things like that. Then, heavy metal poisoning in aquaculture areas, like if you are having moistures and mussels and growing shellfish, then you have to know if the water quality is degrading because it would kill millions of people. And recalling a product is not easy like that. You would rather know upfront what's growing in there. Then we are starting to look at use cases in US around simply ports, the same as Europe, which are commercial ports and ferry terminals. Ports really need to have a lot of data for compliance and audit reasons, but also for their own sake. Like, how does the tide and the shipping and everything combine with the change in water quality? Because if the water is too acidic or basic, then you'll have algal blooms and stuff like that. And ports aren't necessarily this little hollow in a bay. They actually own a lot of water, like hundreds of kilometers outwards, and they're responsible for looking after all of that. So if you have an algal bloom inside or outside the port, they're all dangerous situations because they will impact everything. So being able to be aware of it and monitor it. The way people do it right now is sampling. Actually working with us, our pitch has been pretty simple. We never have to oversell because it's pretty straightforward. It's like, do you want to send out a boat every week with 5 people collecting test tube water and send it on a lab for thousands of dollars? Or do you want to just put in a device like a baby monitor and pick up your phone and forget about it? It's a no-brainer, right? And if you add up the cost of doing it manually for 5 to 10 years, our device is 1/20th or 1/50th of that cost. So our sales are moving really fast, but I think the thing we need to figure out is, because we're based out of Europe, we've only started incorporating in US and raising American investment rounds. We need to figure out how this whole thing is working. We need to have more local partners and check out the ecosystem. At a product or a company level, we're not worried about the expansion, but I think we need to figure out how is it really done? How is this business really done over there? It's different in UK versus Europe versus
versus the U.S. I would think you would have to look heavily into how you're going to scale in the U.S. because it's so. Just a quick thing that I thought about was, like, if you do have an order, what's the process? Like, how quickly can you get one of these online, or say 5 or 10 of these online? Say if I ordered 5 of them for my area or what have you.
You should have that totally deployed and ready within 4 weeks. Okay. If you have staff that is actually able to understand our videos and what we are saying, it's pretty much off the shelf. It's like an Apple phone just arrives and you just unplug and do it. But some people don't even want to use an Apple phone, right? Like my grandmother, even for that, she needs some hand-holding. So if you are a private shipyard owner with a backyard and you're like, you know what, I don't even want to open the package and put it in water, then we have even our engineers flying out there. And all of this in like 4 weeks, and then that's it. It just stays there. And then suddenly you have this baby monitor in the water. And just like a baby monitor, you pick up your phone and you see exactly what's going on. And then one day when you're sitting down at your desk and you go like, let me look at a deeper trend. And then suddenly you open up the data and you go like, every Friday it's very alkaline around 2:00. Oh, that's the same time all the fishing guys come in. Could it be connected to that? And you suddenly spot something that you didn't know. And then a year from now, you take that data and you start to see some sort of a big pattern, like a seasonal change or whatever.
Yeah.
And then maybe you can use that to finance another part of your yard because you tell the bank it's a very stable property, but I need to protect it from these sorts of things. And let's do that, or let's do this. So the proposition only becomes bigger in value, because how can you ever lose?
Still guessing your next move. As an investor, most people have no idea where they actually stand. The Investor Readiness Scorecard changes that. In 5 South, just 10 minutes, score yourself across 5 critical categories: financial foundation, education, strategy, network, and action readiness. Instantly discover your investor phase and get your exact next move. No more guessing. No more spinning your wheels. Take the free assessment now at investwithscottkid.com.
I'll give you a moment for that. How can you ever lose on getting more data? I think it's at your end because I don't have a phone here.
Yeah, no, for some reason,
sorry.
I apologize for that. My phone somehow rings on my laptop and I don't know how to turn it off.
Okay, so I was going to say that how can you ever lose out on having more data on a commercial asset? It's always going to be more valuable, right? The more you have it.
Yeah, that's very true. I would say, just thinking about it, just the seasonality of things, like, say, for instance, the shipyard could be saying, hey, the water is more alkaline at this time, but it could also coincide with all the heavy rains and everything, where you could be getting runoff from a lot of different coastal areas. So it might not necessarily be the shipyard. So that would be a big plus for a shipyard, because you could say to the insurance company and the bank, hey, the bulk of this is not coming from us. It's coming from external.
Exactly. And, that sort of stuff does happen. We were recently working with a shipping repair spot, I'd say, dock sort of space in southern Italy. And they found that they were repeatedly getting fined for certain water quality that they were supposedly impacting. But what they found is, because of their proactiveness, they actually had better water quality inside their dock than the people outside. Yeah. So they actually proved that with all the filters and the measures they were undertaking, they were definitely not ruining it. They actually had better water quality inside versus outside. And so then it was pretty clear that all of the contamination and the things that were happening were probably happening outside of the stream. Therefore, they were coming from a different part of the ocean or the nearby settlements. It wasn't definitely the ship repair yard, which kind of drastically reduced their fines. They were going to expect millions in it, and it ended up being a fraction of that.
Yeah, that is a great example of a great use case where, because just the water quality, myself being a yacht captain for many decades now, the water quality it's not just local. The water is coming from pretty much everywhere. You have ocean currents, wind, weather, you have runoff, you have the land, you have the localized stuff, but it's also tidal and everything else, to where it can be affected by so many different things, and being able to filter out all those data points, very helpful, and I would say, what I wanted to ask, what do you think is going to be your biggest hurdle getting into the U.S. market?
I think from the entry level things that we've looked at, for smaller customers that are not huge, we found conversations great. They tell us what they need, we understand their pinpoint, and we are moving. But for really big customers, like the ones we've cracked in Europe, like the port authorities or the public-private organizations or the public organizations or defense and people like that, I think we have to figure out the regulatory aspect. Like, how do they work with procurers and suppliers, and what sort of certifications do you need and things like that, which we have figured out for this part of the world, but we have to figure out what it is for US. But for private customers, we've actually found, as most people find, that the American market has been great. They move faster than even Europe. The hotels we've spoken to, the private shipyards we speak to, they're moving faster than the counterparts in Europe, and they love it. And once they understand it, they are just going for it.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that, because in the U.S., when it comes to capital and the markets and things like that, speed to market is pretty quick. With governments and larger companies, corporations, you have a lot more legalities and bureaucracies and stuff. Whereas if a private company, myself as a private company owner and stuff like that, it's easy. If I make the decision, it's myself, pretty much myself, but other companies can do the same. Some of these smaller shipyards and other marinas and stuff, they could be pretty quick to move on something like this. Because if they just say yes, they could order it right now, and then you have it in 4 weeks.
Agree?
Yeah, no, that's a very unique concept, because I think you'll probably have a lesser time, and it'll probably speed to market will go probably pretty fast in the U.S. It'll be a matter of how you can scale quickly, because I know Europe is kudos to getting through the regulatory environment of Europe, because
actually I think the regulatory environment is harder than the one in US. So we are actually very optimistic and super excited. So we are currently in the LA Blue Accelerator, which is based out of the Port of LA and the Port of Barcelona. So that's our connect to the US, but also equally, I'm going to be in SF next week, and I'm there a lot. We are raising an investment round with few American investors in it. And then we are starting to look at hiring a little bit here and there, especially in the West Coast, potentially in the East Coast, we don't mind, for BD, sales, and investment and things like that. I think the question we will need to consider at some point is the delivery. So currently, our products get shipped globally from 2 different ports. One is in southern Italy and one is in UK, and it goes everywhere from Asia to Latin America, everywhere from that. But if we do have a better way of assembly or manufacturing, cheaper, somewhere in America, or
Blueprint, the passive investor due diligence checklist. You found a deal, the returns look great. But before you wire a single dollar, do you know what you're really investing in? Most passive investors skip the hard questions. No PPM review, no sponsor vetting, no exit strategy. They hope for the best. Blueprint fixes that. For pillars of protection, 87 plus vetting questions, a live scoring dashboard that gives you an instant verdict. Invest, caution, or avoid. Work through each tab. Note your red flags. Review your score. Decide with confidence, not gut feeling.
variable costs, then we could even locally do it. But it would be a question of finding the right space, finding the right investors. The talent I'm not worried about. There are great engineers there. So we're definitely going to find enough engineers. That's not an issue. But where should we do it? But also the investment is important, not in terms of raising. Funnily enough, we've had no issue raising money because it's just a good proposition and people come on board. We've not had any issue raising. Raising isn't an issue. We're actually almost always overfunded. We have so many grants. We've won competitions. We were COP29 People's Choice Award. We were an Earthshot nominee. Funding hasn't been a huge issue. I'm also a serial founder. My other co-founders and I, we've exited companies before. So we had a decent network to raise. And we ourselves also put in initially. So it was okay. So raising isn't a problem. When I say investment, what I mean is who comes on board. That's important. Because I don't just want capital. I want value add. Because we're expanding to US, if an American investor comes on board, it'd be great if they bring one more thing with them. You know, will they introduce us to the ecosystem, or do they know some buyers that we can talk to, or are they simply just good connectors because of who they are, or maybe they are well-connected HNWI who can introduce us at the right places. Basically, we're looking to, like, raising isn't a problem, but raising from the right people who are going to double down on the value they bring to the company.
Yeah, that is always the key issue. You know, you could probably raise the money for just about anything, but alignment of interest is really the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Because, if you don't have the alignment, it probably won't work out very well, because they're going to be in it just for the bottom line aspect of it, and they're just going to care more about the returns, which that won't drive the overall purpose or the value proposition that you're putting down.
Absolutely. That's pretty much it. And so far, to be honest, the few investors that we spoke to already, they had proactively reached out to us. They found us instead of us even going there, because I'm only flying out there next week. So I haven't even actually physically gone there. But the ones that we have already reached out and spoke to us seemed great. They weren't necessarily all from the marine industry, but they were very keen on adding value. So I'm feeling very bullish about this. I'm feeling about the rest of the year in America turning out to be great. I think that the US, and you know this, has a very good maritime and blue economy, very decent industry. It would be great to see how we can enter it and do as fast as we did here in Europe, and also enjoy the ride while we do it. I guess that's also important.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to have a problem because the U.S. maritime market is so robust, and it includes a lot of different things, and plus just the landscape of the capital markets and everything.
I mean, question for you, Scott, because you're in this industry and you know this better than me. Do you think there is value for AI at this point in time to enter the industry, or are we a little bit ahead in time for the US to start introducing that sort of a very AI forward mindset into maritime?
I think it is very ripe for that. I think we're just at the infancy. I mean, with a lot of myself having a maritime background and in yachts and also in commercial real estate, both I think are behind in AI and stuff like that. And a lot of these implementations could be.
But could that mean they're not ready for it?
No, I just don't think a lot of people know or understand, have grasped the fact that this can be, all these different things can be implemented. I think with a lot of segments of the U.S. and stuff, there's a lot of business, like a lot of the mom and pop small starter businesses have not implemented a lot of AI because they don't really maybe understand the overall value that it can bring, and I think there's this, we're at the infancy also of education and also in the infancy of implementation. And I think once people start getting it, and you're seeing a lot more AI solutions in maritime, and you're also seeing in commercial real estate a lot more AI solutions. But I think once people understand just the power of it, I don't think it will stop. And it's already here. It's just a lot of people are not really, they don't understand it. And there's always a big fear of the unknown. We had the same thing with social media, same thing with the internet, Wi-Fi, just all of these things. There was a big negative backlash of it because people didn't understand it. And it's not hard. It's not bad. It's just new. And I think
see that's part of my excitement, but also worry, because I feel like educating people and bringing them on board does cost you time and money, as opposed to when they're already educated and just asking for the response. And that time and money is actually worth it if you get a good return on that. So let's say the education time was roughly 3 months, and then the deal went through and the cost of acquisition definitely outnumbered what we got from them over 5 years. Then it's worth it. But if it's that the education time was 9 months and the size of the deal was small, then it starts to look like a failing proposition. I think in US, and so in US, I think what we are keen to figure out is which are the segments that are most amenable for our first target beachhead to enter. And if your listeners are there or yourself, I'm happy to take thoughts on that. We are taking inputs on American thought leaders on what do you think is a sub-segment in the blue economy that would be the right time and place for us to enter, where even if we spend time and money on education or pilots or demos or whatever, the return we get from that industry would actually be worth it. And then, of course, over a period of time, that would apply to everybody. But there's always an entrance. You know what I mean? Like the first door that makes the most sense.
Yeah, the proof of concept always takes time, even though it's already proven. But to prove it to this market it might be a completely different thing. But, I think if the education was already there, the opportunity would not be there. You know what I mean? With this, you get to be they say the cutting edge, but I think it's more bleeding edge really, because it's already there and it's already very sharp. Because if that education aspect really has to kind of be a part of it, because people will take that and run with it once they kind of understand. A lot of people don't even know these type of things are even available. And you just might need to catch that one person that will understand it, that didn't know this is possible, because there's a lot of things in the last 5-10 years that have come along that I didn't know were possible, but until when I did, then it became a huge opportunity for me. So And I think in the U.S. you'll find that you have a very forward-thinking people when it comes to innovation, and
Yeah.
very creative in that aspect, especially when it comes to implementing like economies of scale and to where it can open up to really quickly. I think at a certain point with the great product that you have, it's going to be the roadblocks you're going to get is probably getting enough of these out of there once it takes off the critical mass.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good problem to have. And I think we'd be able to solve that. I'm most keen on finding the right partners right now. And hopefully, with your podcast and the exposure, if there are people out there who are willing to start off with us, either early buyers, early assemblers, go to market partners, channel sales, bundled sales, just, entry propositions that make sense from what I said, then we'd really be very open to that.
Well, I think, you have a great product here, and I think you'll definitely probably find that you will be probably assembling or making some of these here in the U.S. just because speed to market is going to make more will make more sense, especially when you get to those economies of scale. And I'd be very happy to, help them and connect you with whoever, I think would seem. Yeah. And there's a lot of podcasts just off the top of my head that I think Captain Liam, he's a very big proponent of conservation and things like that. He has a great podcast. I think he would open you up to a very wide audience. So I'll be glad to make those introductions along with some of the other capital connections, because I can think of a few of them right off the top of my head that would potentially be interested in it. Whether there's alignment or not, you never know. But all you really need is one to start that conversation, right?
Yes, absolutely. All we need is one. And we are founders. We are here for the refusal. We'll take it.
That's a part of it. The refusal is one refusal is one step closer to the yes.
Yes. And it's usually like 100:1 for anything. We get like 100 refusals for one yes, but that one yes is all you need. Yeah. And the way I think about it being a serial founder is how to keep going until you get to that one yes. And that keep going is about resources on all fronts. How to not run out of cash, how to not run out of employee inspiration, how to not run out of your own, the space, the passion, the joy in your heart. I think what helps is I'm an insanely passionate person, so it's impossible to get me out of the game.
Well, that's obvious.
I love the ocean. I would do anything to make it better. And for the rest, we just have to be strategic and play the game well, I guess.
Well, that's obvious that you're very passionate about this, and it shows. You can't contain that. But I know one thing that myself, getting a lot of no's, I prefer the no than the maybes. The maybes are harder.
You are so right. Yes.
They're so the worst, because it could be 6 months.
It is so true. So true. It's a waste of time, and you just keep on. You don't know where you are.
You have
and
to
in
keep
millennial
following
speak.
up with them.
Yeah. Yes, and in millennial speak, I would say it's what we call situationships. You don't actually know what is going on, and it is worse than not having something. It's like a maybe customer.
I never heard that before. That's great.
You're not a millennial, Scott. You're older than.
Yeah. I don't want to say how old I am, but it's fine with me.
I think for the younger millennials, this is a very popular word. It just means that it's not a relationship, but it's a situation, and you think it's a relationship, and it's a disaster because it's a maybe.
Yeah, and
so a no is obviously much better.
It's very situational, and it causes much more emotional duress. It really
100%,
does.
100%.
Like if my generation is yes, no. We came from the other guys, which were really hard, which didn't say anything. Yeah. The quiet generation, but now the situation shifts. That explains it for me. Now I get it.
Then the funny thing I find is for the bigger customers, the ones who are really huge, they do take a long time to convert because their process is so long with so many steps in between and meetings. And at some point, it does look like it's not going anywhere. But sometimes it has taken 10 months to convert a big guy. So it's maybe possible. I guess the important thing is to make a very fair assessment of what is going on in the sales process instead of being emotional and having wishful thinking. How I wish I could close this sales and therefore I will keep on driving it, rather than is it really going to happen? And from that perspective, I think I've learned a simple thing. People buy painkillers. Vitamins are always a maybe. So if we are a painkiller and we hit their problem straight away, they go for it.
Yeah.
But if it's a vitamin, then they're a bit like, maybe I need it, maybe I don't.
Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. We don't know unless you've taken an allergy test or done a blood work and all those things and really analyzed it. I mean, but there's where the data comes in, and that's what you're providing is the data solution. And I would say that just in thinking that, that there's so many applications for this. I mean, the large guys, I know like Walmart and places like that, but I know that's not your target. But I know sometimes it takes 2 years to get a product on the shelf, So if you're looking at like, say, a large maritime organization, you're looking at, could be a process of a year to 2 years. But all of the smaller support groups that ancillary businesses around that, speed to market with those could be within months or weeks or days, depending on what they are. But once all the smaller companies have it and it's proven to them, and they start telling them about it, the word of mouth travels quickly, and especially in those kind of things. But this has been really great and very informative, and I look forward to following up with you in maybe 6 months or so, just to see how it's going. And I know
I'd love that. I really enjoyed being on this and speaking to you and having your valuable insights on some of the things. We seem to think very alike, so that's great.
Yes.
And in between, from here to 6 months from now, I'll be in US quite a bit. I'm in SF next week. In June, I'll be in LA. And then I think August or September, I'm planning to be in New York Tech Week as well. So I'll be quite around. So if you can think of anything that should be on our radar, people we should be talking to, if you ever think of any advice, please throw them our way. And it's the same offer to your audience.
I will definitely be keeping in touch with, with other people I think you'd be aligned with, podcasts and capital markets. And just off the top of my head, have you thought about going to some of these yacht shows, like the Monaco Boat Show, San Remo Boat Show, Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show is the biggest in the world. Even just to go walk around, and I will probably be there. I'll be glad to make introductions.
I'd love to know more about it. If there's a way to, actually have a startup pass or even showcase part of an innovation program or something, that would be great. I would love to be there.
Yeah, even a demo or something like that at one of these shows. The Monaco Boat Show is pretty big. Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show is very large. Palm Beach just finished a few weeks ago, last month. But all of those yacht shows, I think, would be a good fit. But I'll definitely keep in touch with you about that and gladly make you introductions with everyone. Like I said, this has been fantastic. It got my wheels working, and I really appreciate that you guys are doing such a product like this, because I think it's very needed and very necessary.
Thank you so much, Captain.
What's the best way for people to find you and find out more about what you're working, what you're unique?
So look me up on LinkedIn, Joyita from Samudra Oceans, or email me, Joyita, Joyeeta, @samudraoceans.com. These are the most popular ways, but you could also just go to our website, www.samudra.com, and you can send us a message there. You can find Samudra Oceans on LinkedIn, send us a message there. I am extremely active on LinkedIn every single day, multiple times a day. So if you find me there, Joyita, Samudra, I would most likely be the top result. And I'm constantly engaging with people. So I'd love to talk to you about any advice, any thoughts that any of your audience has, and also from you, Scott. I look forward to staying connected. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. We will definitely be keeping in touch, because I think this is such a provides a necessary solution. And we'd love to hear your comments below. And all of her contact information will be in the show notes. We look forward to more conversations like this with you. And again, probably follow up in 6 months. I think we're probably going to be a completely different company and a completely different founder. You're going to be in a completely different space because where you are now in 6 months from
Hopefully, that's the
especially when
goal.
this takes off, because I know this well. But thank you again.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you. Bye.
Well, I'm Scott Kidd of the Yacht Captain Investor Podcast, and just a reminder that the best investment you can make is the one you make in yourself. So invest heavily in you. See you next time.
Amen. See you next time.